I'm Elizabeth Sullivan, the president of the Chautauqua Women's Club. The Women's Club has an impressive 128-year history of service to the Chautauqua experience. Today we focus on three things: a venue where there are opportunities for creating dialogues and forming friendships, scholarship opportunities for students in the fine and performing arts schools, and relevant programs. Every week we have 4 speakers, 3 down at the house, and the Saturday afternoon Contemporary Issues Forum here. Please look at our website to learn more about our programs and events. It's really easy to remember: www.chautauquawomensclub.org. No spaces. I just want to highlight 4 things that are coming up this week. First of all, the lives and music of the Beatles. On Thursday at 4:30 at Lene Hall, Chautauqua's own Herb Kaiser will share his retrospective performance that all age groups enjoy on the life and music of the Beatles. The funds raised will go into supporting the program, scholarship, and facility of the Women's Club. You can find more details in today's daily. There is a flyer, visual aids, and as well as an article on Herb. Tickets are available at the clubhouse from 9 to 5 down at 30 South Lake Drive, just next to the Athenaeum. And really, this is an event you shouldn't miss. The second thing I want to bring up is on Tuesday morning at 9:15 at the Women's Club, Bridget Quinn will talk about broad strokes, women that made art and made history, in that order. And Wednesday at 3:30 down at the clubhouse, the morning AMP lecturer, Stella Remington, who is the former director of MI5, will be our Contemporary Issues Dialogue speaker. And on Thursday morning at 9:15, Clint Wilder, the senior editor at Clean Edge Inc., will lead our Chautauqua Speaks series, talking about clean energy, perspectives from California to Chautauqua, again at the clubhouse. I hope as you're leaving, you'll stop at the table over there where several of our members are seated, and learn more about the benefits of membership. It's really a bargain. It costs $25. Okay, the format for today. Our speaker, Tom Ajamie, will talk for about 40 minutes. After his talk, you're invited to come to the 2 microphones for questions and answers. Please remember that we are looking to you all for thought-provoking questions, not speechifying. This talk is being recorded and it will be available tomorrow, Sunday, around 11. There will be a book signing over here after Tom speaks. Now I'm pleased to introduce our speaker today, Tom Ajamie. Tom Ajamie is an internationally recognized trial lawyer who has successfully represented clients in complex commercial litigation and arbitration. Tom has handled a number of high-profile cases, including groundbreaking securities and financial cases, cross-border litigation, business contract disputes, and employment issues. He was named by the National Law Journal as one of its 50 litigation trailblazers. And Tom has been described by Chambers USA as a stupendous litigator with a winning attitude and work ethic. Tom has won 2 of the largest awards ever handed down by an arbitration panel for investors, including a $430 million award. He's also won a record $112 million civil RICO jury verdict. Tom is regularly asked to give legal analysis by news media outlets, including ABC, CNN, CNBC, NPR, and BBC. And his work has been featured in publications such as the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the American Lawyer. He is the co-author of the book Financial Serial Killers: Inside the World of Wall Street Money Hustlers, Swindlers, and Con Men. Nobody wants to believe that their bank branch would take advantage of them, but banks do. Today, Tom will talk about monsters, scam artists, and people who are trying to trick you or steal your money. The reputable firms like Wells Fargo, Lehman Brothers, and JP Morgan Chase. The title of his lecture is Protecting Your Wealth from Financial Serial Killers. And ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Tom Ajamie.
Elizabeth, that was excellent, and you pronounced it so well. My goodness. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be in Chautauqua, and thank you, Elizabeth. And thank you for pronouncing my last name properly. Very few people can pronounce Ajamie. Hey, I can pronounce Chautauqua. I want to thank my dear friends, Kelly and Lyle Heimbaugh, for inviting me here along with the Women's Club and others, and for taking good care of me and being such great hosts. Thank you. I appreciate it. I wanted to get here a little earlier yesterday so I could walk around and just take in the lovely beauty. And so I had an early morning flight on Delta to Buffalo. But there was bad weather in New York City, so they canceled my flight. But I have to share with you what Delta did, though, to accommodate me. They put me on a flight today at about 11 o'clock. And it was going to go from LaGuardia to Cleveland. Then from Cleveland to Detroit. And then from Detroit to Buffalo. No problem, though, because I was going to arrive today at about 6:30. Not so bad. So, I was a little down about that. However, I got the follow-up email, and it says, Delta, congratulations. And I thought, oh man, maybe they've worked something out. Congratulations. And I looked at it, and what it said was I was bumped up to economy comfort on the leg from Cleveland to Michigan only, not the other ones. So, okay, nothing against Delta, but I had never seen a routing like this. I think they deserve some kind of a award or, a medal. I don't know what these people are interesting. A gentleman called me up, and he had been referred to me, and he said, I have $130 million with Payne Weber in New York City. And my broker is a very well-known guy named Enrique Parasquilla. And this is his real name. Enrique Parasquilla handles money of some of the wealthiest people in the United States, and he's the #1 retail broker at Payne Weber. I said, that all sounds good, so why are you calling a lawyer? He said, well, I got a very weird phone call from the compliance department at Payne Weber in New York, and they told me I have a $2 million deficit with them. And I don't know how I can have a $2 million deficit when I have $130 million there. And so I thought, that, okay, there's something odd. Even me, who's sort of a cynic on these things because I've done it for so long, thought that was a little bit odd. So I insisted on flying to see this fellow. I got on a plane and went to see him. And he pulled out his Payne Weber statements, and indeed, $130 million. And it showed the various investments and all. So I called Payne Weber and tried to find this fellow, Enrique Parasquilla. He's one of their top guys, and by the way, he was in their headquarters office on the same floor as the chairman at that time of Payne Weber on Avenue of the Americas at the headquarters. And I said, I'd like to speak to Enrique Parasquilla. I have some questions for him. And they said, we don't know who you're talking about. And I got sent to a few other numbers, and I was persistent as you might expect, and kept calling and saying, I need to find Enrique Parasquilla, and they said, we don't have an Enrique Parasquilla here. Finally, someone said, well, there was a guy here, but he moved out to San Francisco. So I got online and tried to find Enrique Parasquilla, and I saw some guy that lived out there, and so I thought, I need to just go see this guy. I don't want to call him. I want to see his face. I want to talk to him about the $130 million and why the client is now being asked to pay $2 million. He should have $130 million. Payne Weber says he's got negative $2 million. The statements say he has positive $130. I fly out there. I go to a very nice, beautiful high-rise, last known address for Enrique on Green Street. Can't find him. Asked the doorman where he'd gone. They said he moved to Black Hawk, which is a beautiful suburb outside the city on the East Bay of San Francisco. And they didn't have a phone number for him, so I just drove out there. I went to the gated community, asked for him, and they finally said, we'll give you a message. We'll give him a message. You're looking for him, and they did. I left my phone number. This guy calls me. I said, hi, Enrique, I'm Tom Ajamie. I'm here on behalf of a client. Mr. Lerma is my client, Lerma. I just got to ask you some questions about his account. Tom, no problem. Let's meet at the bookstore. I'll meet you there. We'll have a cup of coffee. We do. Enrique shows up, thin, good-looking guy, beautiful shirt, nice dark pants, loafers, pulls up in a Porsche Carrera. It's all good. And Enrique comes up, how you doing, Tom? Hey, are you a runner? You look like a runner type. I said, I am, Enrique. Well, so we talk, and we immediately got along. And I said, I need to talk to you about Mr. Lerma's account. It's very strange. Where's the 130? It's there. It's just in different accounts and sub-accounts. We had some in some Swiss offshore accounts. And so it's all there. And he says, you're not suspecting me of anything, are you? And I said, well, no, I'm just really trying to find out where the money is. And he said, well, don't worry. It's all there, and we're going to figure it out. Tom, do you have some time? Let me take you around. I want you to meet some very important people that I do business with, and I have done business with. So he took me to one of the big San Francisco law firms. We went there. The senior partner came out, hugged Enrique, brought out the staff of associates. They all started talking about the various business deals Enrique had done, went back into the fabulous conference room of this famous San Francisco law firm. They met in private for a while, then came out with me, and we all spoke, and it was legitimate. He said, I want to take you to meet a CEO of Shaman Pharmaceuticals. Her name's Lisa Conte, and this is one of the companies that I've invested your client and other clients' money in. So we drive out to this beautiful place, and we meet Lisa Conte, who's a real CEO of a real company. Okay, this is pretty good. And they said, if you have a minute, I just want to take you by the Fresh Choice salad bars. Because I'm an investor in these, and I put clients' money in them. And so we walk into the Fresh Choice salad bar, one of them. I followed him. And we went there, and we walked in, and he said, look how lovely this is. I mean, this is beyond a salad bar. This is sort of a monument. Everything's perfectly clean, and the vegetables are fresh, and kept talking about all these things. And after a day and a half with this fella, I was even more confused, and I thought, gosh, this guy's legitimate. I've met all these legitimate people. Something's wrong. Paying member probably screwed up. They're a large company. It's a bureaucracy. He's left, maybe things got messed up or something like that. Well, I couldn't get any answers. I had to file a lawsuit. Let me jump to the end. And Enrique had slowly taken all the money out of the accounts. And there was $130 million that he had siphoned out. And my client, Mr. Lerma, really was $2 million in debt. So how did Enrique do it, though? Okay, so how would you just take that out? And you've got a company like Payne Weber, their headquarters. You got this compliance department with hundreds of people that are supposed to be watching these things. So we were trying to figure it out, and we found these statements, or these letters, in the file of documents that Payne Weber gave us. And there were these wire transfers, and they were signed by my client, Francisco Lerma. And I showed them to Mr. Lerma and said, Mr. Lerma, there's various transfers for $2 million to this account, $3 million to this account. Is this your signature? I mean, did you do this? And he said, yeah, well, that's my signature, sure. And I said, okay. And we kind of went through that. A few months went by again, and I thought, I have to go back and ask him, Mr. Lerma, is this your signature? Yes, it is. Let me ask you, I know you have a Bank of America account. Is this your exact account number? I don't remember, Tom. I don't know. I have a bank. Could you look up your account number? And he did. And it wasn't his account number. So we were both confused, and I said, well, you signed these things. That's my signature. Okay, so what happened? I started looking at the other ones, and there were about 60 of them. And then I noticed something. I thought, oh my gosh, after about a year and a half, 2 years, I hadn't noticed this, but the signatures all look pretty identical, which they should, but they almost look perfectly identical. So we took them to a copy machine and copied them on clear plastic, the signature part. And then we stacked up the 60 on top of one another. The 60 signatures are absolutely identical, which is humanly impossible. All of our signatures look similar, but they cannot be exactly identical. And that's when we sort of broke open the case and broke open what had happened here. He had just taken a signature and he was tracing the signature. I learned a lesson from that, which is don't ever ask the client, is this your signature? Because they can say yes. Say, are you sure you signed this on this date? Is what you have to ask. And even when they say this is their signature, we don't trust it anymore. And I made a very controversial statement to a group of brokers who asked me to speak, 600, 700 National Association. I said, you know, you guys, I got to tell you, I've been doing this for 30 years. Every single case I've had, every single case, I found a forged document. It's kind of a sad statement, you know? But every single case there's been a forged document. Sometimes it's of consequence, sometimes it's not. But a forgery is a forgery. Sometimes it's just some kind of form that needs to be filled in, and rather than going to see the customer, the broker just signs for the customer. So look, these things really do happen. What did we do with Enrique? Well, obviously we sued PayneWebber, we sued him, we recovered a tremendous amount of money, a high confidential number, which was good for the client. And then I spent some of the money I made from it just working for a year with the United States Attorney's Office, and put him in jail for 6 years. Not bad. So it was a point we had to make, that I didn't feel like the thing was closed until the guy went to prison, and he did, and obviously he was stripped of his license and everything else. Enrique was smooth. These guys are all smooth. They can walk up to a stranger like me, and they can build a relationship in a matter of seconds. You know, everyone knows the Bernard Madoff story. How did so many very intelligent, truly intelligent, smart money managers get taken? How did they get conned? I know how. I've been there. I've seen these guys, and they are really good. And you like them. And I liked Enrique. You know, he just knew how to do it. And he looked good, and he spoke well, and he was polite. Gosh, he had status. He was one of the top retail and one of the top brokers at PayneWebber. This is how good they are. How did Enrique find his clients? Enrique did something that a lot of these people do quite well. They get into a group that they can relate to and who can relate to them. Because of his last name being Paraskia, he knew from his upbringing in Mexico City, he now is an American, he knew a very, very wealthy people from Latin America, and they knew him. A lot of them knew his father. His father was quite prominent. And so what he did was he went into those circles where he had grown up. People who had grown up with him, people his father had worked with, people who spoke Spanish with a lot of money but maybe were a little bit intimidated by New York because their English wasn't perfect, so he was a bridge between wealthy Latins and, you know, the hustle bustle of New York City. And they trusted him. And why did they trust him? Because he was one of them. One of his clients said to me, we picked up a number of other clients after this. Business Week did a very nice 2-page story, which was quite helpful because it sort of went international. We picked up clients from literally around the world. Enrique was good. And one of the guys from Argentina said, it's impossible. There's absolutely no way that Enrique took my money, Tom. You're missing it. There's absolutely, I've known him since he was this tall. He would never do that. There's a lot of denial. It took a long time. It took a good couple years to convince this man, when we finally had the documents, that yes, the young man he had known and he had somewhat raised or been around with actually stole from him. Enrique liked to ski in Aspen, so he would rent a house. He rented a house from a disabled lady who was in a wheelchair, and her means of making money was renting her house to wealthy people to ski. I told her I think her money had been stolen from her. She couldn't believe that because Enrique had been in her house, been in her home, and eaten with her and talked to her and brought his wife and the whole bit. And he said, it can't happen. She said, it can't. I said, he stole your savings. That's all I have is $250,000. I'm telling you, he stole it. Vicious. Enrique had a couple wives. One of his wives he divorced while he was at PayneWebber and gave her a $1 million settlement. They parted on pretty good terms. She was younger. She didn't know what to do with the $1 million. She knew he was an extremely prominent guy. Guess where it's going? I think she still loved him a little bit too, so, I got to excuse her a bit, okay? So, and by the way, she had a good heart. Good-hearted people are easily fooled, unfortunately, because they're good people. They don't think other people are bad. So she gave him the $1 million to invest. He took that. This guy's vicious, disabled, family friends, people who've known him since he was young. And so when Business Week asked me for a quote, I said at first, I said, this guy behaves like a serial killer. I mean, like they have no emotion. They have no feelings. And then I thought, throw the word financial in there. And so I said, financial serial killer. That was the quote in Business Week. And then the publishers of this book decided to pull that out and put it on the cover and call this financial serial killers. These are sociopaths. They don't have the empathy gene. They don't care about you. They just are compulsive and they cannot stop themselves. And it's hard to recognize them. We don't sort of do mental tests of these people. We don't put them through a psychological review. If they look good and they're at a prominent firm, most times we just trust them. And we trust the firm to back them up. Lillian Wentz was 89 years old. Lillian was 89 when her husband died. They had been married for 60 years, Depression era folks. In 1950s, Mr. Wentz had purchased 500 shares of the Hathaway Manufacturing Company. 500 shares of Hathaway Manufacturing Company for $6,600. Well, let's fast forward to the 60s and 70s when Hathaway merged with a company called Berkshire, and this little guy named Warren Buffett started to run the company. The $6,600 investment, by the time Lillian's husband had passed and she was 89, was worth $25 million. Pretty lucky. By the way, some other family members had bought stock in that same company, but it didn't do anything for 10 years, so they all sold it. I think Mr. Wentz just hadn't been paying attention, frankly, but so anyway, it was good for them. And so they're sitting on top of $25 million of Berkshire Hathaway. Now her husband's died, she's 89 years old, and she doesn't know sort of what to do as far as just handling her affairs and her estate, her husband's estate. And then she sees something in the newspaper about you can lose all your money through estate taxes when you die, and she didn't want that to happen. She wanted the $25 million to go to her 3 adult grandsons. So she knew she had Berkshire, she knew it was worth 25. She didn't want to spend it, she wanted to pass it on. That was her wish. She lived in a home that was valued at about $60,000. And she had 0 debt and 2 cars that were about 12 years old. Obviously no debt on those either. It was one of the most beautiful balance sheets I'd ever seen. It was lovely. It was unbelievable. Here's a lady worth 25 plus and 0 debt and living a very extremely below modest life, which I thought was really very admirable. She didn't know any lawyers, so she checked around in families, and she had a distant cousin who was a lawyer. And she went to him and said, I need to know what to do. I want to make sure this gets passed on to my grandsons, and I want to try to give as little as I can to the government through estate taxes and all that. And he said, let me introduce you to 2 guys. So he brought 2 insurance agents in. And the 2 insurance agents said, we have a plan for you. It's called a family limited partnership. But what we need to do is we need to get rid of the stock because, stock is like dangerous. Stock can go up and down, and you can lose your money in stock. Stock is too risky for an 89-year-old. You don't want that. As an aside, you probably all know that Berkshire Hathaway is not even a stock, it's a mutual fund, very well diversified in a number of companies, in a number of entities, and even privately held companies. So it's about as balanced as you're going to find out there. And it's managed by a guy who most people think is a pretty good investor. But they frightened her, and she was nervous about that. So the insurance salesman said, we'll set up this family limited partnership, but we need to sell that stock, and let's buy some life insurance and some annuities. What does an 89-year-old who's worth $25 million plus need in life insurance and annuities? And that lifestyle. I mean, she was fine. She just wanted to leave the stock to the grandsons. But her distant cousin, the lawyer, was in on it too. And hey, he's family. And family would never rip you off. So they did. They converted the stock into life insurance and annuities. By the way, those weren't worthless products, but they were completely unnecessary products that included a lot of fees. And not that this would be important to the two insurance agents, but they each got a $1 million commission. So there goes $2 million right there. She didn't know what happened. She passed away, and it wasn't until the grandsons and the daughter-in-law, her son had passed too, the daughter-in-law went to a financial advisor here in New Hampshire, and this lady looked at it and called me, and we went forward. And no one could really believe that a cousin could be in on something like that. By the way, we did sue. We got back the difference, the fees, the expenses, the costs. It was about $8 million, okay? All this cost. And so she had lost that, and she shouldn't have lost it. There you had family. Once again, you have a family member, though, a family member. So when I'm writing the book, I go to all these FBI guys we've worked with over the years, because we try to get guys prosecuted, bad brokers, bad bankers, try to get them prosecuted, work with the FBI, turn the cases over. Sometimes they pursue them, sometimes they don't. It just depends on how busy they are. And I said, I was really disturbed by this, this fact that this cousin was in on this scam. It's like a family member. And the FBI guys in New York said to me, well, of all the scams we see, we'd say the vast majority are family members scamming family members. And are you sure? Oh yeah, of course, we see it all the time. Okay, so that was an eye-opener for me. Since that time, I've seen many, many more family member scams. What is the financial serial killer really, really good at? As I mentioned earlier, building a relationship, getting into your circle, meaning this: they are someone who's just like you, which is what makes it very effective. It makes them very effective and shows how highly intelligent they are. Okay? A really good financial serial killer looks like you and goes to your church or synagogue. Why? Because you figure, I'm in church. This guy looks like me. He sits next to me. We pray. What's the problem? A really good financial serial killer who has, say, an Asian background gets into the Asian community of people coming into the United States and says, let me help you. Let me help you with the language differences. Let me help you. Let me interpret what's going on. I know the U.S. I've been here for a while. Asian trusts Asian. Really good financial serial killer says, oh my gosh, this is so cool. We both went to the same high school. And you say, wow, that is kind of neat. And I knew your sister. Oh wow, I knew your brother. They can build these bonds very easily, and they're very skilled. It's such an important part of the scam, the con. We've actually given it a name in the industry. The name is called affinity fraud. Affinity fraud. Find someone and find a very deep emotional connection. And then they will trust you. And how many people make a decision based on trust? It seems to me like there's nothing wrong with that. I trust you. But as you break it down, you start to see that trust is just an emotion. And It is an emotion that really highly intelligent sociopaths know how to manipulate. It's not objective. It's an emotion, it's a feeling, trust. Now, I'm not discarding it 100%. Obviously, someone you distrust is probably a warning not to do business with them. But I am saying this: trust alone, sharing the same high school, going to the same church, knowing some of the same folks, living in the same neighborhood, being a part of the same beautiful community, is not the be-all and end-all in determining who's going to handle your money. There have to be some objective factors too, okay? So, what are some of the objective factors? Number one, you have to understand, part of the responsibility is on you. And I really hate saying that because the industry says that too. And I always say, don't you dare blame the victim. And I'm not going to blame the victim. I'm going to say we have a little responsibility. The little responsibility is to watch our investments. A money manager, and there's a lot of great money managers. I use them, I know them, they're great. But there's some bad ones too. Okay, but a good money manager should be able to explain to you what your investments are. If you don't understand it, you're not dumb. I used to struggle all the time when I talked to these guys from like Goldman Sachs, which was considered at least at one time to be so blue chip. I'm not sure it is anymore. And some of these other places who would start explaining these financial products to me. And they say, well, it's an inverse CD that's linked to the stock market notes, and you can't lose because it's a CD, but you can make more than a CD if the market goes up, a little bit less than the market goes down. And I think, God, I don't really understand this, but maybe I don't because I'm not very smart. These guys are really bright. Well, there was this company called Enron, and there's this guy named Jeff Skilling. And this guy Skilling, the president of Enron, would explain what Enron did, and so many financial analysts would walk out of the meeting and say, I just don't understand that. And he'd say, you're dumb. This is easy. And he kind of berated people. And then everyone felt like they were dumb, and he was really smart. First warning sign: if you cannot understand it, get out. Okay? You can probably understand Exxon, you can probably understand a basic bond and some mutual funds. If you can understand it, okay, but you need to know what's in your portfolio. If there's a hedge fund, I'm not saying it's bad, but do you understand it? And that means going beyond the name. The stable value fund, we found many times, they can name these things anything they want. Stable value could be loaded up with like tech stocks. There's no regulation as to what they call these things. The Lifetime Stability Fund. And they add a bunch of internet junk in there, the days of e-toys and all this, okay? There is no regulation of that. You can call these things whatever you want to call them, so you better understand past the title. Also, when you're talking to your advisor, ask, are my accounts separated from other people's accounts, or is our money all pooled together in one big account? And are you, Ms. Advisor, handling it all, or is it actually established in a third party, maybe a separate custodial account? Some people have their money at Schwab, and then they have the investment advisor over here. So you almost have a check and balance. You're going to get your statements from Schwab, and then your advisor's over here. So it's not all bunched together. Madoff's was all bunched together. People were writing checks to Madoff. You can't do that. That's a basic rule. You have to have separate account with your name on it, and then your advisor has to be separate too, okay? Watch out for these things they call these financial products. They call them, sometimes you'll hear the word proprietary products and all, but I'm just going to speak as my opinion, not to offend if there's anyone here from Merrill, because I know people from Merrill and Goldman and all these places and Chase. But I look at the performance of those quote-unquote Chase mutual funds and the Wells Fargo mutual funds, and they all, frankly, have pretty bad performance. Well, there's a lot of fees involved. So the person from Wells Fargo selling this to you is getting a fee. by selling a Wells Fargo product that the Wells Fargo broker might not get if he or she is selling a Fidelity product. So it's a fair question to ask, how are you being compensated here? Why not? I have to tell people my hourly rate. Sometimes I blush, but I tell them. I have to be upfront about it. They have to know what they're paying for, what's happening. I have to give detailed bills. Why shouldn't you ask the same thing from your advisor? Don't be timid. It's your money. And no one's going to watch your money better than you. And these people are not smarter than you. Some of them are pretty smart. A lot of them are salespeople. Getting back to the Madoff thing, I want to tell you, the notion of trust to sort of wrap some of this around a story. We got so many calls when the Madoff fraud was exposed. And I remember one distinctly where a fellow called me from Ohio and said, "Oh my gosh, I gave Madoff $5 million. I'm wiped out." I said, "Let's take it step by step. I'm a lawyer. We need to kind of go through the background. Okay. How did you meet Mr. Madoff?" "I never met him." "Okay, well then who did you send to meet him?" "No one." "Did you ever speak to him?" Well, I called the office quite a few times, and what happened? He was too busy. And he couldn't take my call. "Well, who did you talk to?" "It was the secretary." "Well, what did you do?" "I wrote a check for $5 million and I sent it to him. All my friends were making money." Okay, this is not, the guy I was talking to on the phone was not a unintelligent person, but I think when it came to money matters, he was, what's the word? I don't know. I don't want to say, like a little ignorant or something like this, I mean, but you know what? That's not a sole story. There were a lot of people who gave this guy, Madoff, money. They never met him, never shook his hand, never asked how their money was being invested. But that was part of his allure. He was in demand. He's super smart. He doesn't have time. Mr. Madoff's jetting across the country. Oh my, you must be important. It's crazy. But, this is what people do, and we want to try to learn from those situations. Getting back to Lillian and the family, we went to the trial. We sued all there was a pool of insurance companies involved. The brokers go and sell this life insurance, they sell these annuities, but they spread the risk among a bunch of insurance companies. And one of the insurance companies, this was actually their largest policy they'd ever sold, their cut of the amount, and their internal rules said don't sell life insurance and don't sell annuities to people over 60. And by the way, that's not uncommon. Most, if not a lot, of insurance companies say just don't do it. And there's a lot of reasons. Okay? But here they bent the rules a little bit, and they said to the two insurance brokers, you need to go film Mrs. Wentz, because we want to see how she is. She's 89. And send her to a doctor. And so they did. They filmed her. They went to her house. You could see them, oh, hello, Mrs. Wentz, how are you today? And she's so happy to have company. She's an older lady living alone. And they're, kind. She's giving them cookies and walking them around the whole bit, showing them old family photos. The insurance agents look bored, but they're like listening, right? Yeah, you gotta listen, you gotta smile. They ended up editing the tape, cutting parts of it. So we had the videotape that they had sent to the insurance company, but it was all cut up. And you sort of wondered, okay, were those the points in the tape when she forgot what her name was? She forgot where she was when she started rambling about something from the 1930s. Why'd they edit the tape? They also had sent her for a physical, and the physical came back and said she suffers from mild dementia. Okay. Despite this, the insurance companies wrote, and despite this, the insurance agents sold. I tell you because, I'm trying to give you an example of the viciousness. These are not nice people. These financial serial killers, they're vicious. They have no heart, they will steal from a family member with a smile on their face, and they'll go visit a lonely 89-year-old, almost 90, who's happy to have some company, who's happy to get some attention, eat her cookies, sit in her living room, and then steal her money. That's who you're dealing with. These are bad people. So, the point of the book was to do my small part in trying to educate people. The publisher said, can you write a book that people can read, make it somewhat interesting so they actually read it? I took it a step further and tried to make every chapter 15 pages. I figure we are living in the Twitter generation, right? So maybe 15 pages or more. Over 15 pages might be too long, right? So these are just little chapters you can read. But the idea was just to try to educate. And I started to realize a lot of people, we don't have financial education in school. We just don't. We have other things we teach which are important, but we don't teach financial education. And a lot of people don't have time to take financial education courses. I wish they would spend some time. I think a lot of people spend, frankly, with all respect, more time planning their vacation than they do paying attention to their finances. Got to think about that. But the idea was to educate and hopefully give people some warnings. And I hope that maybe one day the number of cases I get actually decreases. I'm getting a little older anyway. I don't need a bunch of them. And they decrease because fewer and fewer people are getting ripped off. That is my goal. That's why I came to speak to you today. And that's why I love Chautauqua. Thank you so much. Okay, close enough at least? Okay. We are taking questions. Ma'am.
In the last month or so, Art Magazine had suggested or strongly advised that you ask your financial advisor to put in writing what their fee was. And with my UBS advisor, I had asked her to do that when I signed on, but she told me verbally that it was 1% for sell or buy, I'm not sure which. But then later she said it was 1% for buy and sell. Mm-hmm. And I asked her if she'd put that in writing, and she said, no, my manager would never allow that. Yeah. What's that about?
Okay, there's no reason you can't put it in writing. Zero. Zero reason. It's not a good excuse. I'm suspicious of her. I don't know her. I'm suspicious.
Did you notice any, obviously these people can make enough money honestly, so it's not about the money apparently. So have you come up with any pattern as to why these people do this, what they're trying to accomplish? And secondly, if you would quote, did you dig in at all to the Wells Fargo, how they could set up all these fake accounts where they're just not going through compliance? These people were doing it just through computers. Yeah. So if you would address those two issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of tossed me like a great softball when you said Wells Fargo. Thank you so much on that one. Let me start with the Wells Fargo. I like that one because we had a big case against Wells Fargo that was on page A1 of the New York Times. They thought it was so wonderful. They actually put it right there below, statements by the president in Afghanistan and the economy, and there was our case. And so this was a few years ago, and what we found was I got a call from a family in Beverly Hills who had some suspicions about their account. Things seemed to be wrong, but the account statements were literally 300 pages long, 300 pages, which I think is part of the scam, by the way. They think they put you into so many things, it's almost impossible to read all that. It shouldn't be that complicated. And what they were doing there was they were, the stockbrokers were buying stocks for the clients, which they had permission to do, but if the stock went up in value, a year later, 2 years later, whatever it was, they would cancel it and say the trade was meant to be in the broker's account. So they'd move the profitable stocks from the customer into their own personal accounts. Right there at Wells Fargo, like right there. And it went on for 2.5 years. I think that's something that caught the Times' attention. It was, how could this happen for 2.5 years and no one catch it? I had the same question. My clients had the same question times 5. And at that time, then we went to the U.S. attorney too, and we went to the L.A. city attorney, and they started investigating the account issues. And that all sort of, I felt vindicated because Wells Fargo, of course, was saying, oh, no, it's just a small error, different software programs. We required Wachovia in 2009. It's complicated. We required Wachovia. We had to make our systems mutually work, and it's hard. All these excuses, right? And it's like, come on, guys, this is simple. Your brokers are taking profitable out of customer and moving profitable to themselves. This is not complex. And, we eventually won and all that. But then it started, the authorities started investigating, and they saw all the fake accounts and all the sales incentives. Listen, I think Warren Buffett's a great investor. He says it's a one-time problem. I'm not convinced it is. It's too much. 2 million fake accounts, you got to be kidding me. I don't know what to say except that it's inexcusable. Be careful, right? It's Wells Fargo. Woof, blue chip. Wow. Safe, big bank. Wow.
And then the other issue of all these people can make lots of money honestly. What drives them?
The psychology.
Any particular patterns?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. And by the way, I decided to add a chapter at the end of the book about the psychology of, and it was sort of like a last-minute thought, and I put it in there. And I've gotten more compliments about the end of the book than I sort of have in the beginning. So I think the next one ought to be the psychology of these people. We can't generalize because they're people, and everyone's different. But let me just tell you some general patterns you see. Some of them, they're just kleptomaniacs, and sociopaths. They just have to steal, and they get a thrill from stealing. Some people, it's not unusual, have a gambling problem, divorce, money's tight, this kind of thing. We have a lot of cases where, we find the money went to bracelets for the third mistress, and diamonds for the second mistress, and, this kind of stuff. These are warning signs, by the way, and all the firms know this. If you got a gambler, someone going through financial hard times, divorce, doesn't mean they're going to rip off, but these are points in life where people can get desperate, okay, or want to spend money. You got to look for people who are flying to Vegas all the time. Really, it's a certain type of personality. So I'd say, those are the couple of the reasons why. And then some of the people start off as just being honest, and then they steal a little bit, and they steal a little bit more, and they steal a little bit more, and before you know it, they're in pretty deep. So it's a number of things depending on the people. Good question, so thank you.
All right, so you talked about affinity fraud, the
Yeah.
person that prays next to you in the church or synagogue, knows your brother.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you trust that person, right?
Yeah.
So, but they're a sociopath, and that's probably a small percentage
Yes.
of advisors. Given that, what would you say is good criteria to find a good financial advisor that you can trust?
Okay, good. And by the way, yes, I'm happy you said it's a small percentage because I agree, it is a small percentage. And in the book, we do not try to bash advisors. That's not the point. In fact, I wanted to say right at the outset, and we say it, that most advisors are fine. They're good, they're honest, they're trying their best. They may or may not be the best advisors. You might make money, you might lose money, but they're not out to hurt you. But there is a percentage, I'm going to guess 5 to 10-ish, that do want to hurt you. And the idea of the book was to help you avoid those and get into the hands of the good ones. And let me be quick to say, since I'm a lawyer, I'm not bashing the industry at all. I'm going to tell you, I think half of lawyers I meet are kind of terrible. So I'll say it about my profession, We don't do a good job at screening. So, there are these bad people. So what would be the criteria? We often recommend that you get several recommendations that you might run them by if you have a family lawyer. I'm a litigator, so I wouldn't do it, but like someone who's done your will, your trust, family lawyer, do a little bit of your own internet investigation. It's amazing. It's amazing how many times you'll put a guy's name in the internet and then find out he's had a bankruptcy and he owes money over here. And it's just like, it's basic, but no one ever took the time to just spend 20 minutes researching their financial advisor. So sometimes the clues are kind of right there. Your family advisors, and if you have like a trusted accountant too, listen, I think if you have a trusted accountant, a family lawyer who you've had for a while, you have sort of a smattering of people who you have some checks and balances now. And I would ask them for some recommendations. I think your friends is fine too. But ask your other advisors around and get some different opinions. In our book, we have some chapters where we actually take advice from some brokers and money managers who we trust and who we've known. And we let them say what they think they should do, and this is what they say. The honest guys and ladies say, yeah, ask other people about me. And by the way, if you want something in writing, I'll put it in writing. I mean, boy, don't, okay. Thanks.
Hey, thanks very much. The great points and great stories that you've told us. Following up on the second question, in the hands of highly intelligent sociopaths, what is the potential problem arising from Bitcoin's blockchain and other anonymous technologies, and how could we possibly deal with some of those problems?
Well, I don't want to be old-fashioned, but the problem with the new currencies right now, they may get developed and all, but I have observed this. The government and regulators and all that, number one, are always way behind the curve. So Bitcoin's coming out. Who's regulating Bitcoin?
That's the whole point.
No one.
Don't know.
Pardon me?
We don't know.
It's just don't. And it's spread across the internet. So who are you dealing with? Is it like some guy in Russia who learned how to scam people? I mean, I don't know. I mean, so you don't really know who you're dealing with. So I get nervous about it. I know people don't want to hear that because Bitcoin has run up and all that type of thing. But I've seen a lot of stocks and fads run up. And I've seen a lot of people get wiped out too. It's fun when it's going up, and it's really terrible when it hits zero. And you see families completely wiped out. So, the government's slow on that kind of thing. By the way, private placements, if some of you have been offered private placements, they're not even really regulated, believe it or not. There's a huge gap. The states don't really regulate it, and the feds don't regulate private placements if you make a private investment in a company. It has to be registered. That means it has to be written up on a piece of paper and filed. But there's a huge gap, and there's no one regulating these. So there are a lot of areas of finance that aren't regulated. And even if they're regulated, I'm not convinced the regulators are up to speed.
Agreed.
Thanks.
Hi, thank you for your
Thank you.
wonderful presentation. This may be a little off the subject, but what control do you have? I'm sure you're aware of what's going on with the multi-employer pension fund, and you're sort of dealing with a board of trustees that you really didn't choose, that you don't know anybody about, anything about, and
Yeah.
then you find out that all of the promises that have been made to you are in big question mark.
False. Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about what can the membership do about the board of trustees? I mean, I'm in a situation where, I mean, not me personally, but you ask them for financial papers, and they just won't give it to you.
Yeah.
And by law, they're supposed to give so much, and if you ask anything beyond that, they will not. And we have no control over that.
They're required to give it. It doesn't mean they give it, though. I mean, they are required. There's two different things going here. Are they required? Yes. Are they necessarily following the rules? No.
No, right.
So then the question is, what are you going to do? And they're relying on you just to sort of go away.
Right.
Okay? And I think, not to boost my profession, but I think you ought to go to a family lawyer and have them write a letter and say, give these to me. We're required by law to turn them over.
Yeah, I'm talking about the union, the musicians'
I understand.
pension.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But someone's not playing fair.
I see.
You're owed all that
Yeah.
by law.
Yeah, they're starting to charge us for it. If
Yeah.
they'll give it to us, they want thousands and thousands of dollars for each.
I don't know why. That's not right. No, they can't charge for that. So someone's playing around with you there,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, if you were the king of the regulators, do you think there's a solution? Do you like Dodd-Frank? Should we revive Glass-Steagall? Obviously in this environment, it might not happen, but if you could fix it in a regulatory fashion? Do you have some ideas?
Well, yeah, look, I think there has to be some regulatory structure. I think in a big picture sense, where I am bothered, we have to have regulation, okay, and it has to be enforced. I think a lot of the complaints I hear from the industry, I don't hear complaints from individuals about Dodd-Frank, okay? I hear, individuals like to have protection, but like there's sort of this group of industry people who don't like. But the big thing I hear is this: it's unnecessarily burdensome on smaller firms and smaller money managers and such. And I agree with that. I think there's a blanket regulatory format out there, and Merrill Lynch can afford it. Okay. And so they have to come in and tailor it more so that smaller firms aren't penalized, because it's very, very expensive for small firms. And it's put a lot of small firms out of business. So there has to be some moderation. But I have to say, and some of my friends won't agree with me, but I'm not against any regulation, frankly. I think, if anything, unfortunately, there's so much theft, and your life savings to me is so important. I just wish it was more effective regulation, and that they could determine who can bear what, and sort of like not a one-size-fits-all in the industry.
Hi. I understand, it's my understanding with Madoff that he was kind of making his own monthly statement. So you get a statement in the mail, he was the one typing them up or whatever. But with Dean Witter, so this person has 130 million.
Yeah.
January, February, March, and all of a sudden in May, there's April, there's negative 2 million? How does that happen? Aren't there...
They create falsified statements.
So
he works with someone in another department, and they're creating statements on PaineWebber letterhead, but they're creating fake statements.
And so if you go online, this was before you went online to check?
Yes, it was, yeah.
Because if you're checking online and things like that, you see every debit and credit, and there's no way to really do that.
Correct, yes. Well, be careful.
Right.
There's a lot of ways to hack, right? And the Defense Department's website can be played with. They, these hackers change the language and things, right?
This is kind of pre-computer,
It wasn't, but the gentleman it was not. It was during the computer era, and he could have, but the gentleman was 70, and he just wasn't adept. And he got the statements, and he just trusted the statements. I think that, yes, online checking.
When you look back at the statements, were they different than the statements that other people were getting? Could he have seen discrepancies, or were there signals or something?
He hadn't signed up for online access.
But even just the monthly statements that you get.
His monthly statements look good, and they're progressively the amounts that he was earning were increasing. And so like a lot of people, we kind of look at the front page and we figure, oh gosh, I'm making a little bit of money, I feel good, right? And I think most people maybe focus a little bit more when they've lost money, but not a lot of us look too carefully when we're supposedly making money. Yeah. Sir.
Well, so my question is the same as his. So the only way to know that your paper statement you get is correct is to go online and to buy it?
Yes. I'm really hesitant to endorse the online. I think you have to have online, definitely. I am having a difficult time endorsing 100% reliance on online, because they can change from day to day. And you can't prove what you saw a month ago online, right?
So if you can't trust your paper statement.
I get them both. I do. I'm just telling you what I do. And I was really struggling with this because I didn't want to, I'm just really struggling with this before I said this to you. This is one thing I've been thinking about is I don't want to cause unnecessary burden, but I got to tell you, I get both. Because I want a paper printout of what it looked like on that day 6 months ago. Because I can't go back online and say this was what it looked like 6 months ago. I can only say what's online today.
Okay.
No one, I don't know if people like that, but I'm having a little trouble. I think the online is good. I think it's great we're doing it. But if they can create, they being some of these bad people, can create fake statements, paper statements, certainly they can manipulate online somehow. Certainly they can.
I just got a letter from, I have a Wells Fargo account, and I got a letter from the CEO full of boilerplate, but essentially what it said. is that under Obama, fiduciary accounts had to be offered by all brokers. I may be wrong here, but that's my question. And so now under the new they've taken that away and made that the option of the broker.
Yeah.
And the president's letter said to me, basically, I'm not kidding here, we're not offering it because you know you can trust us. That's what it said, okay?
How did you feel about that? You know you can trust
Well, I
us.
was insulted, if you want to know the truth.
I find
He
it
thinks I'm an
insulting
idiot.
too. I agree.
He thinks I'm an idiot.
Yes.
My question is, what are your comments about fiduciary accounts and none?
Look, okay, so for those of you who might not know, hopefully everyone knows this. Fiduciary means they have to put the client's interest first. They have an obligation to you. I have, as a lawyer, by law, a fiduciary duty. I have to put my client's interest above mine. I have to think about them first. I cannot put my own financial interests or personal interests ahead. There's two standards in the industry. One is that fiduciary duty that registered investment advisors have. You have to be a registered investment advisor. Then there's the duty the brokers have, which are also financial people giving you advice, by the way, called suitability. It has to be suitable for you. The investment has to be what they think is good for you. Okay? That can be so manipulated. And that, in my opinion, is where we see the most problems. Now, under Obama, or his people, or whoever did it, they wanted to impose a fiduciary responsibility for anyone handling your money. To me, that's like so obvious. I'm surprised it wasn't part of like our Constitution. Like, yeah, they're handling my money. Shouldn't my interests come first? But it's not that way, believe it or not, it really isn't. And there's a lot of people fighting it. And now they're talking about rolling that back, and they don't want to have to do that, and it's burdensome, and it's okay let the brokers just kind of decide what they think is best for you. To me, it's absolutely mind-boggling, but it's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been investing for more years than most people here. Here's a quick rule for your next book.
Yeah.
Never take advice from somebody who's making less money than you are.
So my question is twofold. I presume you invest. What do you do and what do you advise someone when you set up a brokerage account, equities, bonds, and you must agree to binding arbitration with the broker if you have a problem?
Yeah, I get it.
What do you do personally?
Yeah, what do
If
I?
I came to
Me?
you-
I cross out the arbitration clause. They still want my money.
And
Okay.
they accept you?
Yes. What he's asking is, I don't know if you've read your forms, but everyone who's got a brokerage account here, at a bank or a brokerage, there's somewhere buried in your account a promise that you're going to go to binding arbitration in what they call FINRA, which is an organization set up by the industry. An arbitration organization set up by the industry with arbitrators picked by the industry. And there's a lot written about it, and it's unconscionable. But they have been able to get away with it, and the courts have upheld it, saying it's a contract. And if you sign the contract and you agree that if they steal your money, literally steal your money, you have to go in front of 3 arbitrators that the industry, have selected. Okay, it's tough. I have the largest award ever in FINRA, $430 million. Having said that, when they asked me to crow about it in the Wall Street Journal, I said, just because an investor occasionally wins a case in FINRA does not make the system honest or fair. Okay? It's not honest and it's not fair. In my opinion, it should be a neutral body of people doing this, not people who are at the mercy of and getting money from the industry. But that's my opinion only. I don't want to offend anyone in the financial industry here, because they all disagree with me. Yeah.
I'd just like to leave us with a quote from Mark Twain. He said, "There's only 2 times in life you should not speculate: when you can't afford it and when you can."
Some good pearls of wisdom. This is the last one? Yeah, oops.
Okay.
Okay, Elizabeth, I'm taking my direction from you. Okay.
Why is Wells Fargo still in business?
5 banks control about 70% of the industry, and we don't have anyone who's in any kind of position of authority who will break them up or punish the bad ones. In fact, unfortunately, they're kind of protected, which is not, by the way, very a capitalist system if you think about it. You know, we kind of have this monopoly of 5 banks, which I didn't think is exactly very American, and it's protected too. It seems to me that the bad ones ought to be allowed to go out of business and then let the other ones, there's a lot of great banks, a lot of really, really good banks. In fact, yeah, there's a lot of great banks out there. And not that hard to find, regional, national. Let them come on up, get the dead wood out of there. But why? Because no one in our regulatory system, no one in the Congress is ready to break them up. Yeah.
Will you please explain why someone over the age of 65 should never buy an annuity?
I don't know if I'd say you should never buy an annuity.
Who should buy an annuity?
Okay, it's going to depend on a lot of things, and this is what they're supposed to be looking at, okay? What's your overall net worth? How much money do you need to live on going forward? What are your other investments? Do you have bonds, stocks, other annuities? Do you have mutual funds? This all has to be looked at, okay? What are the fees? Not all annuities are bad. I mean, a lot of annuities are good. It just might not be, once again, it might not be appropriate for you. What's the best for you at your age and in your financial situation? So there's this guy who advertises on TV, and I can't, Ken Fisher, yeah. And he says, if you have an annuity, sell your annuity. Sell, they're all bad. I don't agree. They're not all bad. And you can't make a blanket statement like that, okay? You have $25 million in cash or Berkshire Hathaway stock, you don't need an annuity. If the fee's 7% or 8% or 10%, you don't need an annuity. If you have a stream of income coming from other things, you don't need an annuity, but there might be circumstances when you do need an annuity. So I can't give you a blanket response. All I can say is you have to go and to whoever you're speaking to and explain your total financial situation and whether it's worthwhile or not. Let me add one last thing. Also, where's the money coming from to buy the annuity? There's a lot of unnecessary transactions out there. Like I was telling you about Mrs. Wentz, the 89-year-old. She was fine with her Berkshire Hathaway stock. She didn't need to do all this stuff. She could put it in a family limited partnership and still save the estate tax. It did not need to be did not need to be changed into something else. But when something else you own is sold and then put into an annuity or a stock, there's a transaction and someone's making money there. So you just have to be aware of that. Elizabeth?
One more.
How are we doing? Okay, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Oh, sorry. Can I take one more? Or no?
Time for one more.
Okay, she's so.
And if you decide that this is not a good question, I'm okay with that.
Oh, I wouldn't.
When you're talking about the previous administration and their concern for the best interest of the investor, I thought I heard you sort of approach the possibility that the current administration may have other ideas about how this whole process should work.
Yeah.
Are you willing to comment further?
Yeah, for sure. And I tried to say it in a non-political way because I didn't say it was the Obama administration, but whoever is running, and here is the Department of Labor, and they were coming up with rules on the fiduciary standard. And for some reason, the folks in charge right now seem to be backing off of imposing a fiduciary rule. I don't want to make it a Republican or Democratic thing, but it is currently, as we speak, there's efforts to not have a fiduciary responsibility for your savings by brokers and others. The industry, which is extremely wealthy, is fighting it because it causes them more responsibility, right? I mean, who wants more Hey, I'd like to not be responsible to anyone for my legal advice. Wouldn't that be fun? But I am, by law. So it's being rolled back at this time in history. Is that a nice, polite way to say it? You tell me.
I'm good with that.
Thanks. Okay, I appreciate that.